Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that many of us have probably wondered about at some point. If you're constantly thinking about someone, are they thinking about you too? It's one of those questions that has puzzled people for centuries. And let's face it, when you're constantly thinking about someone, especially if it's someone you care about deeply, you start wondering, are they thinking about me the same way I'm thinking about them? Before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of our exciting discussions. We've got a lot to unpack in today's video, so let's get right into it. First, let's talk about why this thought even crosses our minds. It's natural for humans to wonder about the feelings and thoughts of others, especially when it comes to someone we care about or are emotionally attached to. Whether it's a crush, a romantic partner, or even someone you just have a deep emotional bond with, when they're on your mind constantly, you begin to question if it's possible that they might feel the same way. So, if you find yourself thinking about someone all the time, maybe you're replaying your last conversation with them, imagining how they're doing, or daydreaming about your next meeting, you might start wondering, do they think about me the way I think about them? From a psychological perspective, when you can't stop thinking about someone, it might indicate that they have a significant place in your mind, your emotions, or even your subconscious. You may be emotionally invested in the person, whether consciously or not, and your thoughts can revolve around them because of that emotional attachment. This doesn't necessarily mean that the person is thinking about you as much as you think about them. In fact, it's often the case that when we're deeply emotionally involved with someone, our brains are wired to focus on them, sometimes even overanalyzing every little detail of your interactions. This can create a cycle where you're constantly thinking about them, hoping that they're feeling the same way. But here's the thing, our minds are tricky. Just because you're consumed with thoughts about someone, it doesn't always mean that they're experiencing the same thing. Everyone's mental and emotional processes work differently. Some people are more likely to express their thoughts outwardly, while others might keep their feelings and thoughts more private. Now, there's another idea that some people believe in, the concept of energy or emotional connection. This is something you've probably heard in the context of relationships or deep emotional bonds. People often say, I feel like we're connected on a deeper level, or I can sense when they're thinking about me. This idea leans more into spirituality, intuition, or even the concept of telepathy. This feeling that someone is thinking about you at the same time you're thinking about them. While there's no scientific evidence that proves this kind of energy connection, it's an interesting idea that many people resonate with. Have you ever had that moment when you're thinking about someone and suddenly they text or call you? It might feel like a coincidence, but some people interpret it as a sign that there is some unspoken connection happening between the two of you. That said, if you find yourself constantly thinking about someone, it's possible that they may be thinking about you too, but it's not something you can always rely on. Sometimes, it's just a matter of timing or coincidence. Let's talk about mutual attraction. This is where things get interesting. If both you and the other person are feeling a similar attraction or emotional pull, then yes, it's very likely that you're both thinking about each other more often than you realize. Attraction can lead to a strong emotional connection, and when that happens, it's natural for both people to think about each other frequently. But here's the thing, this attraction doesn't always translate into conscious thought. Some people might be less expressive or less in tune with their emotions, so while they might be thinking about you on some level, they might not be actively aware of it. This is why it's important to consider the overall dynamics of your relationship with that person. Do they show signs of caring for you? Are they making an effort to connect with you? Those are stronger indicators than whether or not they're thinking about you at any given moment. Another factor that can influence whether or not someone is thinking about you is physical distance. When two people are apart for a period of time, it's normal for one or both of them to miss each other. This absence can amplify the thoughts you have about the other person. Think about it. If you're not physically together, your mind starts to fill in the gaps. You start imagining what they're doing, what they're thinking, or even how they might be feeling. This is why long-distance relationships or periods of separation can make you feel more connected, even if you're not in constant communication. But again, this doesn't guarantee that the other person is thinking about you in the same way. People process emotions differently. Some might miss you deeply, while others might not express it outwardly as much. In the end, the emotional connection and communication you share will give you a clearer picture of whether or not they're thinking about you too. If you find yourself constantly thinking about someone, the most important thing you can do is communicate with them. Thoughts are great, but action speaks louder. If you want to know whether they're thinking about you, the best way to find out is by talking to them, opening up, and letting them know how you feel. Sometimes, our fears and anxieties create stories in our heads that aren't always based on reality. Sometimes, the best way to know if someone is thinking about you is to simply ask. Maybe not directly, but through a heartfelt conversation that brings both of you closer. Communication and emotional honesty are key in any relationship, romantic or otherwise. So, to wrap it all up, constantly thinking about someone doesn't always mean they're thinking about you in the same way. Our minds are complex, and emotions can be unpredictable. But if there's a mutual bond, attraction, or deep emotional connection, it's possible that they are thinking about you too. The best way to find out is to stay present, be open with your feelings, and nurture the relationship with trust and communication. Before we wrap up completely, I just want to add one final thought. While it's natural to want to know if someone else is thinking about us the same way we think about them, it's important to remember that sometimes the most meaningful relationship you can have is the one you have with yourself. Constantly thinking about someone else, especially when there's uncertainty, can sometimes lead to overthinking, which doesn't always serve us well. Taking time to focus on your own emotional well-being and understanding your own feelings can help you gain clarity. Self-reflection allows us to understand why we might be so fixated on a particular person, and it can also help us manage expectations. When we take care of ourselves emotionally, it helps to put our thoughts and feelings into perspective. Remember, no matter what happens, your thoughts are valid and your feelings matter. Whether or not someone else is thinking about you in the same way doesn't change the fact that you're worthy of love, respect, and attention, starting with your own self-love. At the end of the day, life is a journey of connections, whether they're with others or within ourselves. The more we grow emotionally and mentally, the better we become at understanding our own feelings and navigating relationships with clarity. If someone is thinking about you too, great. But if not, that's okay too. Relationships are built on much more than just thought. Communication, actions, and shared experiences make them thrive. So, take a deep breath, trust the process, and remember that your worth is not determined by someone else's thoughts about you. Whether they're thinking about you or not, you're valuable and deserve meaningful connections that bring you peace, happiness, and fulfillment. All right, before we close for real, let's take a moment to dive a little deeper into the science behind this phenomenon. When you can't stop thinking about someone, there's a very real neurological process at play. Our brains are wired to focus on things that are emotionally significant. This happens because of something called dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in how we experience pleasure, motivation, and connection. When you think about someone often, whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or someone you have strong feelings for, your brain releases dopamine, which makes you feel good, excited, or even addicted to the idea of them. This can create a cycle where you want to think about them even more because it feels rewarding. So, it's not just your imagination, it's your brain responding to those emotional triggers. However, there's a fine line. If you find yourself obsessing over someone to the point where it's affecting your mental health or daily life, that's when it might be time to step back and evaluate what's going on. Sometimes our thoughts can become obsessive, and that's when it's important to ground ourselves and reconnect with reality. So, what happens when you find yourself caught in this cycle of constant thoughts about someone? Well, it's important to be aware of it and take steps to regain balance. First, mindfulness can be incredibly helpful. When you catch yourself thinking about that person, try bringing your attention back to the present moment. Focus on your breath, notice the sensations in your body, and remind yourself that you're okay in the here and now. Another great way to break the cycle is through distraction. Healthy distractions, that is. Engage in activities that bring you joy or focus your energy on personal growth. Pick up a hobby, immerse yourself in a project, or even spend time with friends and family who lift your spirits. This will help redirect your energy and give your mind a break from the constant loop of thoughts about someone. And here's the most important tip: be patient with yourself. It's normal to think about someone who's important to you. But remember, you're in control of your thoughts, and with a little practice, you can find that sweet spot where you're not overwhelmed by your emotions, but you can still maintain meaningful connections with others. As we wrap up, I just want to leave you with one final thought. True connections aren't always immediate or easy to figure out. Whether you're thinking about someone constantly or wondering if they feel the same way, just know that relationships unfold in their own time. And the most genuine connections come when both people are ready to engage authentically and without pressure. If you're finding yourself in a place of uncertainty or longing, it's okay to feel that way. Give yourself grace. The right people, whether they're thinking about you or not, will come into your life in a way that's natural, honest, and fulfilling. And in the meantime, keep focusing on yourself, your growth, and your journey. You deserve that. With me today, I really hope this video brought you some comfort and understanding. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts or experiences. I love hearing from you guys. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to stay connected with all the future content we have planned. Until next time, remember, take care of your mind, trust the process, and always stay curious about your emotional journey. The screen fades to black. Background music softens as the end screen appears with a thanks for watching message, a subscribe button, and links to previous videos. The screen slowly transitions back to the host, who's now sitting with a more relaxed and welcoming demeanor. Hey, I know we've covered a lot today, but I wanted to take just a few more seconds to invite you to connect. I absolutely love hearing from all of you in the comments section, and it's always so interesting to see how you interpret the ideas we talk about. If you've experienced what we discussed today, maybe the feeling of constantly thinking about someone, or even wondering if they're thinking about you too, I want to know how you navigated that. Was it an emotional roller coaster? Did you ever find clarity? And if you've come up with any tips or personal strategies for managing those thoughts and feelings, please share them. It's so important to support each other in this journey, and your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you enjoyed today's video, consider joining our community of like-minded viewers who are all about exploring deep questions about life, love, and relationships. I love that we're creating a space where we can all learn from one another. It's really about growing together, and you're a huge part of that. So don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear it. It could really help them reflect or find some peace. And hey, if you've got a friend or loved one who's always wondering if you're thinking about them too much, well, maybe share this video with them. It might spark a deeper conversation or give them a little insight into your perspective. Just to remind you, we're all about thoughtful content here. So if you like these kinds of deep dives into emotional topics, relationship dynamics, and the little nuances of life, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way, you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. We've got plenty more to explore together, and I'm so excited for what's ahead. Okay, I promise this is really the last time I'll say it. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation today. Take care of yourselves, stay connected, and never be afraid to embrace your feelings. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll dive into even more fascinating topics that I know you're going to love. The camera begins to zoom out slowly as the screen fades to black. Background music fades out as video ends. The screen flickers back on, revealing the host sitting in a cozy corner of the studio with a cup of tea or coffee in hand, looking more relaxed. All right. I know we're officially at the end of the video, but I couldn't resist popping back in for a quick bonus thought. This is something I've been thinking about lately, and it feels too important not to share with you. Earlier, we talked about how, sometimes, we spend a lot of mental energy thinking about someone, wondering if they're thinking about us too. But there's another side to this that I think is really important to consider. How do we balance that curiosity with self-care? I mean, we've all been there, right? That feeling of wondering if the other person is thinking about you. But here's a little reminder. While it's completely normal to have these thoughts, our peace of mind shouldn't hinge on someone else's actions or thoughts. I know it's easier said than done, but learning to be at peace with yourself, independent of someone else's mental state, can bring so much relief. Think about it. What if the most important thing isn't whether or not they're thinking of you, but how you feel about yourself in this moment? Self-reflection and being content in your own space can help you stop relying on external validation to determine your emotional state. It's like this. When we focus too much on someone else's thoughts, we lose sight of our own sense of self-worth. And I think, at the end of the day, the more we can focus on loving and appreciating ourselves for who we are, without needing someone else to mirror that back to us, the more powerful and balanced our relationships will become. This is a huge journey, and it doesn't happen overnight, but the more you practice self-awareness and emotional independence, the more you start realizing that you don't need someone else's thoughts about you to feel whole. And when that happens, relationships tend to flow more naturally and authentically, without the weight of constant uncertainty. Okay, now I really mean it when I say I'd love to hear what you think about this. Have you ever experienced this kind of emotional balancing act? Thinking about someone constantly, but then realizing you need to focus more on yourself? How did you navigate that? I'd love for you to share your experiences and tips with the rest of the community in the comments. It's always so inspiring to hear how everyone else is handling similar thoughts and feelings. I know we've covered a lot in this video, but there's one more thing I want to leave you with. You see, we've spent time talking about whether someone is thinking about you when you're constantly thinking about them, and how emotions like that can feel overwhelming at times. But there's also a deeper truth to consider about relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or even familial, and that's the importance. When we're constantly wondering if someone else is thinking about us, or if they feel the same way, we risk losing sight of our own emotional needs. What if, instead of focusing on what the other person is thinking, we shift that energy inward and ask ourselves, how am I feeling right now? What do I need emotionally? This subtle shift can truly change the way you approach any relationship. It's easy to get caught up in overanalyzing the signals someone else is sending or chasing an answer to, whether they're thinking about you the same way you're thinking about them. But what if you started focusing on the relationship you have with yourself first? Self-awareness and emotional intelligence are key to understanding our own needs and balancing the emotions we invest in others. When we learn to nurture and appreciate ourselves, we don't just become better partners or friends, we become more peaceful and content individuals, regardless of external circumstances. It's that inner peace that attracts healthy, fulfilling relationships. And yes, I know, it's easier said than done. But trust me, the more we practice this, the more we'll see how much it affects the way we connect with others. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you. These are not always easy conversations to have, but they are absolutely necessary for growth. I hope you're leaving this video feeling a little more enlightened about the balance of thinking about someone else, but also taking care of your own emotional landscape. As always, if you've ever experienced the tug of war between your thoughts and your emotions, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. How do you manage this emotional push and pull in your life? What's been your experience with relationships, whether they're close or long distance? Let's continue this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey of self-discovery, emotional exploration, and meaningful connection. If you found value in this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming content. There's so much more to explore together. Take care, keep growing, and never forget to love and nurture the relationship you have with yourself. You are so worthy of it. The camera zooms out slowly, and the music gently fades as the screen